Hello and welcome back to the Dougie Critchley YouTube channel. There are 3 points between 14th and 19th in the Premier League table. Today we predict who will go down in May. On with the pod.
This week we're talking relegation battle. We've now got 11 games in the sample size, and 10, 11 games, there's been some research to show that not an awful lot, with some outliers fine, but not an awful lot tends to change from what the table looks like after 10 games compared to what the table may look like after 38. Obviously, you're going to get some swings and some outliers, that's fine. But Mark Carey at The Athletic has done some really good analysis here to say that actually, over the last 10 years, within 3 places, up or down, this is where you're going to finish. So it's probably quite a good idea to take a look at this now, because we've got some teams that are really mired into it, some teams that are on the cusp, and then we've got a couple of outliers that may swing quite heavily. It's time to take a look at the relegation battle and wade through it. It's a topic that it attracts a lot of hyperbole, a lot of overreaction. So I think this is probably where we cut our teeth here, which is to cut through it and see what's actually happening. Let's start in 20th. I think the best thing to do here is that you just go to the bottom of the table
and predict it
and work upwards, and just let's talk through the first, 5-6 teams. Stop somewhere that feels quite sensible. Mm-hmm. So we'll start in 20th, and it's Wolves. Dougie, would you like to kick us off with Wolves?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the relegation battle outside of Wolves looks really tight right now. It's worth saying there are 3 points between Newcastle in 14th and Forest in 19th.
Didn't you?
But Wolves are looking a little bit cut adrift now. I mean, Forest have now taken 4 points from their last 2 games versus Man United and Leeds. West Ham have taken 6 points from their last 2 games versus Newcastle and Burnley. And that means that Wolves are now 8 points and a -10 in terms of goal difference off 17th place Burnley. This time last year, they were also in a similarly bad position. They had 6 points, but Southampton were on 2 that year. Palace were only a point ahead on 7, and Ipswich was 17th on 8. There were 6 sides with 10 or fewer points. This year, there are only 4.
So it's a similar position in terms of league position, but the situation with points and gaps is vastly different.
For sure. They do feel very, very cut adrift. And the underlying numbers, the basic numbers really, are really, really bad for Wolves. Only Metz and Lorient, amongst the 96 teams in Europe's top 5 leagues, have conceded more than their 25 league goals. And only Hellas Verona, amongst those 96 teams, have scored fewer than their 7. They've conceded 3 goals in their last 3 games against Burnley, Fulham and Chelsea. And if you want to go a little bit deeper, their shots per game, 19th, shots on target, 18th, shots against, 18th. They're not as bad as 20th, but they're not great. And you do need a serious upturn in form. Obviously, what they've done is make a change in manager. Vitor Pereira, who was the firefighter last year, has been shown the door, 50 days after he signed a new contract?
Yeah,
it's something like that.
Basically 6 weeks after signing a new deal, which we all looked at it and at the time and went, what?
Yeah.
Why would you do that? And it's just cost them more money in compensation, hasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And it's Rob Edwards through the door. He took over at Borough in June. Pretty gutting from a Middlesbrough perspective. He took them to 2nd. They were 5 points behind Coventry, but they were 6 points ahead of 7th. So they were comfortably they were in the automatic spots, but they're comfortably in the playoff mix for this season at the very least. Of course, people remember him from that Luton spell, got them promoted to the Premier League, took them up via the playoffs. They beat my side Sunderland in the semi-final, deservedly so. We had quite a few defenders missing at that particular moment, but forget about it. They were the better side over 2 legs. They then finished 18th in the Premier League, and actually they were quite competitive until about February time.
Luton?
Yes.
Yeah, but only because Everton got a points deduction.
Yeah, sure.
It was... And this is literally not how life works. But if you take off the points deductions, they were not competitive. I appreciate it's contextual.
They won one of their final 15 games, though.
Yeah.
So by the time they were down, they were very much down. The problems for Wolves this season, you're looking at the form of Jorgen Strand Larsen. He's got 4 shots on target in 11 games, just 1 goal. No one else other than Hugo Bueno has created more than 5 chances. Jose Sarr, who started the season in goal, was terrible before being replaced by Sam Johnston. I think he saved 31% of efforts on target, one of the lowest in the entirety of Europe as well. They don't score from set pieces. They don't really create from open play. I think it's very, very difficult for Wolves to survive.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, that moment on the opening weekend of the season where those first 11s, they all flood in for the first time in a few months. It's really exciting to look through, right, who's starting for which team. It's the turn a new leaf, who's looking good. Wow, that's what that team looks like now. All those summer signings are starting. I got to Wolves' graphic. I looked at it and I just thought, oh no! Like, I genuinely just thought that team is not going to survive. Like, there's such a lack of quality compared to the rest of the league in that Wolves team. And of course, they still had 2 or 3 weeks to address that in the window. But the theme of Wolves' transfer windows over the last couple of years has not been a case of let's push on and let's strengthen. It's actually they're leaking talent. And over the summer, they lost to Matheus Cunha, who, probably harsh to say, single-handedly kept them up last year, but probably wasn't far off it at points. And Rayan Ait-Nouri, who joined Manchester City, didn't really replace them with requisite quality. And so you're already off to a bad start. And the ownership at Wolves doesn't seem to be particularly coherent and hasn't for a couple of years. The fans are just sick of it. You know, when a team circles the drain for year on year on year, it becomes very hard to find the positives in anything. I'm speaking from experience here myself, and you probably can, both of you
Absolutely.
can probably relate. It's quite tough. And, you know, even my Uncle John, who's a Wolves fan, I don't even text him anymore to say, like,
Is that due to family issues?
Unlucky about the
or is that
weekend,
more
or
like...
lost again did week, because he can't take it.
Really?
He's that sad. You know, it's
Shout out, John.
No, not shout out, John. He gives it out when Wolves are in Europe, and then when Wolves are bottom of the league, he doesn't want to speak to me. Not shout out Uncle John at all. But still, I still feel a little bit sorry for him. So that's where,
Where do I start, man?
that's where, so is that a trigger?
Yeah. Get it all off your chest, man.
Look, the atmosphere around this club is terrible.
Yeah.
The quality deficit seems pretty obvious to me. It almost doesn't matter how nice Rob Edwards' hair is. I'm just not convinced that he can do enough with this team, and I'm not convinced the board are going to change anything when it comes to the transfer market in January. So Wolves are 20th with 2 points from 11 games. They're probably going to stay there.
Yeah. I find it difficult to imagine them surviving. They might end up a little bit higher, just because I think there's a side that have slightly overperformed on their points above them.
Oh, I think I know who you mean.
But
We'll see
I don't think they'll be any higher than 19th. And to be honest, I'm almost positive they'll be 20th.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Wolves are probably slightly better, and there is a better Wolves to get out of this team. The problem is that I don't think that better Wolves is much better than anyone else around them, right? Like, so there are going to be things that happen where Rob Edwards comes in and, you know, probably picks up a couple of points here and there, because Wolves aren't quite as bad as I think that they have been showing in recent weeks. And, you know, some of Vitor Pereira's decisions towards the end of it, their Fulham game, and look, you can't be being battered off Burnley and Fulham, I'm afraid. Like, that's relegation form. And they were amongst the most abysmal teams I've seen at the Cottage in a long, long, long time. But also, I was looking at it going, hang on, where's Andre? Where's Jarrod Gomes? Like, where are the players in the midfield that actually can win the ball and win duels? And he sort of abandoned all of it to try and, you know, fix things in a last Hail Mary, last throw of the dice. So I think that there is probably a ceiling that Wolves can get to, which is above where they've been.
Yeah.
But I just don't know if there's anywhere near enough to be then competitive. I don't think there's... You know, you can maybe get above one team, maybe get above two teams. I don't think there's 3 teams that Wolves are going to surpass, even if they get better than what they've been in recent weeks.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that at all. Gary O'Neill was on Monday Night Football recently, just before he started interviewing for jobs, funnily enough. It's interesting how that always happens,
Timing.
isn't it? Yes, and he was talking about how his job as Wolves manager, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and I'm not going to airbrush it. Like, I don't think he did an amazing job at Wolves. He was talking about how he had a really settled midfield and he was really happy with how his midfield setup looked. And over the course of the summer, he had Jarrod Gomes and he had Mario Lemina, and he made Lemina captain to reward him for his leadership and his great performances. And then the board signed Andre. And he was like, oh, I have to put Andre into my team now. And he was like, well, how do I do that? Because I have a midfield too. One is an outstanding player in Jarrod Gomes and the other one is my new captain. I'm going to have to move to a midfield 3. But those 3 are all tacklers and they're not creators. So then he was like, well, what do I do now? And he started changing to a back 3. And then he was like, right, can I get wing backs? How do I replace a creator? And it was like a cascading effect of mistakes that had actually been caused by signing a really good player. And
Should have come to the Cottage.
I mean, yeah, should have gone to the Cottage. Also, you should have just actually signed him in the 3 windows you were chasing him.
Totally fair enough.
So when I say, like, the board aren't helping, the board aren't necessarily performing, and I don't see a lot coming from above that's going to help, this is the kind of thing I mean. Even when they sign a good player, it somehow causes problems.
Yeah.
Good clubs don't imbalance their best 11 by signing players. Like that's not how things work. So from every angle, I look at Wolves and think probably not.
Yeah, my one wild card that they could change. I know he's had injury issues over the last few years, but I do think Hwang Hee-chan is a useful Premier League player who could score maybe 8 goals across the season. That could be useful.
Right, so Wolves will be saved by a useful Premier League player who has been injured quite a lot but could score 8 goals.
That's it.
Moving up to 19th.
Yeah.
Nottingham Forest, 9 points from 11, so significantly clear of Wolves, but still in the relegation mire. 3rd manager of the season they're on. Superb work from Evangelos Marinakis, just superb. A European campaign bubbling away on the side as well, which makes it all the more difficult. And ultimately, I would say a complete mess of their own making, and they deserve every bad result they get. Honestly, the way Nuno was handled and the way the fans' goodwill and sentiment and the way the momentum at this club has been handled by the owner is disgraceful, and I'd have been absolutely furious if I supported this team. So 39 days with Ange Postecoglou, accept defeat. Now Sean Dyche is in, kind of back to where you started with a nice reactive manager. Is this enough to scrape them clear?
Yeah, they'll be absolutely fine. I agree with you on the lack of sympathy for everything that's gone on in that club over the last few years. You know, you can't accuse VAR of being corrupt. You can accuse them of being inept, but you can't accuse them of being corrupt. You can't try and ban the probably most talked about broadcaster in the country and Gary Neville from your stadium. You can't. Even the announcement video of Morgan Gibbs-White, you know, it's all unusual stuff for an owner to be doing. And I know that there is a really strong, fervent support for him amongst the Forest fan base because he's taken them from a real period of underachievement into the Premier League, into Europe. But sometimes you need to look at the bigger picture and be like, this guy is not particularly normal, to say the very least. And yeah, the Ange Postecoglou project, let's call it, felt like a terrible fit at the time, one of the most dramatic departures in terms of playing philosophy, going from Nuno to Ange. It didn't work out. Forest fans spotted that within a few games, but yet directed all the anger at Ange, which felt like a little bit misplaced. I think a lot more of it should have been angled at Marinakis. In terms of where they finish up, I just can't imagine Forest being relegated, if I'm totally honest. If you look at that starting 11, and even if you look at the depth, the signings, the quality of players they brought in this summer, and yes, it was really haphazard, and a lot of them play the same position, which I think is something that was clearly just Edu and Marinakis going a little bit crazy. You know, you talk about Gary O'Neill saying that about his Wolves midfield. Did they want to sign McAtee, Hutchinson, and Bakwa, that all would probably rather play on the right-hand side? It feels a little bit unnecessary, especially when Hudson-Odoi and Dan Ndoye are still up there. They've got Morgan Gibbs-White to fit in. They're still going to play likely a Chris Wood. Arno Calamuendo's a really high-quality player, potential player, but he needs minutes as well. I think their signings felt like such a departure from what the manager wanted and what the club wanted.
I mean, the one that really did it for me, and the one that's the big clue, which is they were always planning to remove Nuno even from June, was Douglas Luiz, basically. Like, why on earth would you sign Douglas Luiz for Nuno? It's just the worst fit ever. However, if you consider the fact that Ange Postecoglou is coming in very shortly, signing Douglas Luiz makes loads of sense. That was the signal to me that they had an idea and a plan for a few weeks down the line. And look, the plan came to fruition. It didn't, because it was terrible. But they pulled the trigger on it, and then they had to abandon that later on. And now they've ended up with, a pretty weird, imbalanced squad, I guess, in a way. But also, they're in Europe. They need numbers. They need players, and so they might have 5 wingers, but they probably need 5 wingers really to survive the rest of the campaign. And
it's just frustrating when you see players of a similar age and sort of experience level all joining a club at the same time. We've seen this with Chelsea over the last few years. Like, there's always some losers in here.
Of course, of course. But you say you can't see them going down, and I agree. The phrase "too good to go down" is officially retired, but I think we could probably bring it back out of retirement for Forest.
Well, just because no one's really been under threat in the last few years as well. So
like a team with Elliot Anderson, Morgan Gibbs-White, Murillo, Chris Wood, and Callum Hudson-Odoi.
Milenkovic as well.
It's not going down.
It shouldn't.
Because, first of all, they have the ammunition and the goals, which is factor number one when it comes to surviving. Can you score the goals to get yourself out of trouble? They have 3 very capable strikers and 5 wingers, plus Gibbs-White and Elliot Anderson, who's superb. So no questions there. And then the other thing is, defensively, yes, they've been pretty atrocious this season. They've conceded 20 goals. 9 of them have been from set pieces, most of which came under Ange in 5 games, to be honest with you. They were atrocious there. But he doesn't employ a set piece coach, which is telling.
It's not, wow.
He doesn't believe in it. He thinks that a member of his own coaching staff should just take care of it,
Which is a perfectly reasonable viewpoint, by the way. Like, someone in your coaching staff should just be able to do this.
I do agree. However, the rise of specialist coaches would suggest that actually this is quite a specialist area.
No, I get that. But Keith Andrews picked that role up, right? And now he's a manager. It's not like it's completely and utterly non-interchangeable.
So Sean Dyche does his own set-piece work. And his team, he is basically a set-piece defensive coach and manager rolled into one.
Yeah.
So if you're good at it, you're good at it. But Ange and whoever he employs regularly on his coaching staff just haven't quite got the hang of it, apparently, because his Tottenham team were bad from set-pieces and his Forest team conceded an absolute ton from set-pieces. So it's maybe something for Ange to look at. I don't know. We'll have to see in the future. But Sean Dyche will fix this because Sean Dyche coaches set-pieces anyway, and his Everton team and his Burnley team, I mean, they were always big, but this is a big team as well. He'll sort it. Mm-hmm. So if you think that the main defensive weakness is going to be fixed and you have faith in the ability to score goals, there is no reason to believe that Forest are going to be hanging around down here for much longer.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. And look, the points about the squad are reasonable, I think, in terms of how you look at where Forest have built from. And I'm like, how do you get Igor Jesus, Chris Wood, who was excellent last year, who probably will drop off, and Callum Mwendo into the same team, and make it all stick? I don't know. I think they've oversigned in terms of players, but I do take the point about the European squad depth, which they kind of were building for already. Like, Jota Silva was there. He's gone out on loan to Besiktas. Like, it didn't feel like they needed to sign all those players.
They've always liked having about 30 players.
Yeah, no, which is fine. But, it just didn't feel like they needed to upgrade Jota Silva that much to, compete in Europe. He's a really, really good footballer.
He would have been fine on Thursday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My kind of 2 points on Forest quickly. One is, from a fan base perspective, I can understand why there is such a love for Marinakis. Now, look, I'm not a huge fan of the geezer, and I think that we can point to the numerous ongoing court cases as probably proof that not all is perfectly well with what's going on there. But bear in mind where they were with Fawaz, where the club was nearly run into the ground, where there was no investment, where they cycled through, 14 managers in 5 years. And look, that's obviously remained in terms of managers.
Yeah, nothing's changed there.
But it was because of desperation channels rather than trying to change the way it is. I can understand why they've gone for a kind of chairman, or the fans have fallen for a chairman who, despite all of his faults, and there are multiple, one, is willing to invest heavily within the club, and two, clearly cares. Yeah. Maybe too much, but clearly cares. And I can understand why Forest fans have been able to get behind that and are willing to forgive a couple of mistakes here and there in terms of bringing in a manager or etc.
So because he has no emotional impact on us, we just go, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Nuno wanted to be fired, clearly.
Here's my hot take.
With Edu in June.
He kept on effectively asking to be fired. It wasn't just on Marinakis.
The land was shifting beneath his feet, and he knew. He could obviously tell that his days were numbered. So we might as well just get it over and done with.
But even before that, here's my hot take on Forest. I think they were right to fire Nuno. I think you should have done it in the summer. I actually think that what they put together last season became incredibly predictable. They were overachieving in terms of pretty much all their numbers. They got worked out in the back half of the season. And there is only so far that a reactive manager can take you if you want to become European contenders on a regular basis, which Forest clearly do want to do. Mm-hmm. So I actually think that moving away from that, and obviously they've now gone back to square one with Sean Dyche, so I think that obviously there have been mistakes made here. But moving away from that to a more forward-thinking manager was probably the right decision. They just did it at the wrong times, and you can't bring an Ange in without a pre-season. At the very least, it's never going to work. I don't mind the actual manoeuvre away from Nuno.
Well, the thinking
it's just it was the manner of it, right?
The thinking is sound, and it's the really tricky step that clubs have had to take. Many clubs fail to take. West Ham is another obvious example of a team who have basically tried to do what Forest have tried to do.
Curbishley at Charlton's the famous one, isn't it?
I'm sure all our listeners will understand that reference. Good old Curbs. But yeah, West Ham recently is the big example of it, of moving from that reactive style with Jarrod Bowen on the counter to, okay, well now we're actually one of the best 8 teams in the league, so we're going to have to play a bit more proactively. And Villa are an example of how that actually has been quite successful.
Brighton too.
But then
they went from Houghton to
you're right.
to Potter.
Houghton to Potter. It was. No, you're right. That was. I was thinking about Herzl there, who's a bit in the middle sometimes. Yeah. But they did. They managed it. So there's your examples there of good and bad. It's really tricky. It's one of the hardest things a team can do to shift that emphasis of a team, and it needs to be better conceived as an idea than what they've done. Mm-hmm. And I agree with you, Jack. They sloped off really bad, and they became predictable, and they overachieved last season. But yeah, Get it done in June if you're going to do it.
I wouldn't have called it a sackable offence, though, how they tailed off.
No, I think
it would have felt quite brutal.
I think they could have easily gone through the next campaign with Nuno, probably not playing to what people thought was their full potential with the new squad, and then got to next summer in like 10th or 11th and been like, okay, now we change.
I think if they'd sacked Nuno and brought in like someone who is a bit more front-footed, it would have felt a bit harsh in the way that, and here's another niche reference for you, Nigel Atkins sacked at Southampton and replaced with Maurizio Pochettino. And at the time, I remember being like, that is outrageous. Like, absolutely outrageous.
There was nearly a riot at St Mary's.
And fair. Like, I can understand why the fans would have been so upset, but it turned out to be a bit of a masterstroke. And actually, what that did in terms of moving club, I would have looked at it a bit like that, I think, if that had happened.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, we all agree that they're going to be nowhere near it
they'll be fine.
in 6 months' time anyway, so that's fine. Let's move on to currently in 18th place, West Ham.
Yeah.
I think we can copy and paste a lot from Forest here.
Yeah, again.
Like,
it feels like too much quality.
Yeah, so
I don't.
A team. Okay, interesting. What I was going to say for the copy and paste was it's a team that has been built to effectively play at its best reactively. A lot of speed on the counter. It's a lot of Jarrod Bowen. It also, when you look at the starting 11, you look at the quality in it, it seems ridiculous for Bowen and Paqueta to be fighting relegation, just in terms of a quality basis. And then also, they have conceded 9 set-piece goals this season too. Same as Forest. They are tied for first, or in this case, last. And they have that very clear and obvious Achilles heel, which they have gone some way to addressing by dropping Mads Hermansson and reinstalling Alphonse Areola in goal, but they are by no means in the clear. Big difference here for me is the striker situation. I mean, how West Ham continue to get this so wrong year on year on year, I do not understand. But where Forest have 3 very able goal scorers to call upon, albeit some unproven at this level, West Ham are relying on Callum Wilson's hamstrings, Nicholas Füllkrug's general health, and in failing that, Thomas Souček to run around up front. And credit where it's due, the guy can't play football, but he can score goals. And I don't know how he does it most of the time, but he is effective. But it is not something that anyone should be relying on. And the physical state of their other 2 strikers means they turn to it quite often.
Yeah.
And it's a massive worry.
Yeah, he's also got probably the most heartwarming celebration in football, and that it's just so stupid.
What, the
when he
spinning
spins
thing,
around with his arms out, it just looks ridiculous. But every time I'm like, you go, Thomas, you do your spinning Beyblade thing. A week ago, I was kind of with Jack. I was thinking, there's not really been that much of a new manager bounce, to borrow that slightly tarred cliche. But actually, in the last 2 games, I think they played really well. When they beat Newcastle at home 3-1. And then the 3-2 win against Burnley was a little bit more dicey.
Well, I mean, they were a better team.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, I've got a couple of stats on that.
Better team against Newcastle
in their last 2 games, they've created 4.4 XG. In their previous 6, they created 3.7.
Nice.
So nearly a whole nother XG they've created in 2 games. So
helps when Kyle Walker-Peters is literally tapping it in on the line. That was like 0.98 or something.
Yeah, but it feels like he's kind of stopped messing around with who's playing on what sort of flank in terms of defending. And then
the midfield was a real, like, what has he been doing since he got in there? Andy Irving.
Yeah.
Like, drop him in.
Magassa,
why not?
I think, played his first game.
Magassa played the first one, then dropped out. Then randomly he dropped Matheus Fernandes and then sort of brought him back in off the bench.
Yeah.
Like, he's been moving a lot of pieces around. And every time he was coming up with a midfield 3, I was looking at it and going, I just don't know what you're doing. Like, what's the plan?
Yeah.
And then turns out the answer is Freddie Potts.
Freddie Potts, yes. A player I'd never heard of until a month ago.
A player I'd never heard of was Andy Irving.
Championship Player of the Year last season, was he not?
Was he?
Yeah, he was excellent.
Freddie Potts, okay.
What?
Potentially for Portsmouth.
Okay. Portsmouth Player of the Year. Okay. But yeah, playing alongside Matheus Fernandes and Paqueta, they've looked, much, much more solid. I think there is still an element of this team obviously hasn't clicked going forward in attack. You know, only Wolves have scored fewer goals from open play than their 5, which is also level with Leeds. But I kind of agree with you. Malik Diouf, Wan-Bissaka, Walker-Peters, Fulkrug, Paqueta. I think Kilman's a better centre-back than he's shown so far this season. I mean, the combination of centre-backs alongside him over the last 18 months, whether it's Mavropanos or Todibo, they're all better players than they've shown.
Agreed.
They are all better players than they've shown, but it's just not working at the back. And Somerville, I think, is a useful player as well and is showing an upturn in form.
Kilman has been a lot worse than he should be. I'll say that for him.
He's been a lot worse than he should be for like 2.5 years.
Yeah, that might be fair. I think I say that I pick him out because I expect more from him. I'm actually done with Todibo. Like, I'm just not expecting that much from him anymore. And Mavropanos is just like...
You and the West Ham fans both, I think, with Todibo.
Whatever. And I know Wan-Bissaka's limitations. I know Kyle Walker-Peters is a squad player. Malik Diouf looks fun, but he takes about 6.5 hours to draw his leg back and kick the ball, which is very stoppable when you're an opponent. So that's a bit of a problem. Just on Potts, Wycombe Wanderers Young Player of the Year and Supporters Player of the Year 23-24. Is that what you were thinking of?
No, I was thinking of 24-25.
He was at Portsmouth last year.
I'm pretty sure he won an award.
Okay. Okay, Freddie Potts.
He played a lot.
He was really good.
Award winner.
I watched a lot of Portsmouth last year, and he was really, really good in the Championship. And that was why, not only is he a bit one of their own, and West Ham fans want to see that, which is fair enough. I think his dad's on one of the coaching staff.
Yeah.
But obviously he speaks like a West Ham boy. He obviously cares about the club. And then you see him on the pitch, and you're like, considering that for the 2 weeks before that, the midfield didn't have any legs. There was no heart, no kind of punch in that West Ham team. Having someone like a Freddie Potts coming in is like, oh, okay, yeah, like he obviously cares, and he can move, which is genuinely a limitation that they had been struggling with before. I'm not completely convinced. I think West Ham will stay up, but I don't think they're going to run clear of this like I think Forest are. Like, I think Forest will end up 11th. I think West Ham will be in the bottom 5. Mm-hmm. I actually don't think this team is particularly good.
I think that's fair. I am tossing them up between 17th and 18th. And I've decided I'm going to make the call at the end of the pod.
Oh, nice.
Just to see how I feel about the rest of it. Well, no, because you guys are dropping such dimes, such dimes, that and informing my viewpoints. That I just got to wait and see what else you have to say. Because
Chris Wood in January, by the way, absolute given. Chris Wood and Adama Traore joining West Ham in January. Put your house on it.
But Chris Wood loves Sean Dyche as well. He's going to be pulled in every direction.
I don't know. I don't know if he's going to accept being third choice striker at Forest all of a sudden. That could be the interesting bit.
He's had a bit of an injury. Let's see how it plays out. But West Ham are on the precipice. I think that's very fair to say. The defenders are all underperforming. The strikers are injured. The balance of the midfield, it's been off. It's improving. We'll see. Somerville is only really just getting to grips with Premier League life because of spent so much time injured last year.
He's very,
very moved around the club.
If they stay up, it's going to be a lot to do with Crescencio Somerville, I think.
Yeah.
I do like him, but I've watched their last couple and he looks like he's getting to grips with it, the speed, the physicality, all that stuff. So there's a lot of questions to be answered here.
I'd also just say, finally on West Ham, mood around the club has surely got to be a factor as well.
Oh, yeah.
Burnley and Leeds are delighted to be here. They feel very unified. Even if they don't stay up, they're going to have a damn good effort doing it. Whereas West Ham, when you've been tricking along that relegation line for so long, it just feels like the mood is terrible.
Well, they've got thousands of people turning up to protest for the ownership, so it will have an effect.
Yeah.
It just does. Anyway, let's go to current 17th placed Burnley. I'm absolutely stunned at how many points they've got.
Yeah.
I don't know how many it is. I didn't even look. It's just too many. I'm gonna have a look now. I genuinely wondered early this summer if they would break records for the wrong reasons.
I think they're on 10.
They have 10. They have 10 points. They are rooted to the bottom of the expected goals difference table. Like rooted, like miles off everybody else. Way overperforming their XG and shipping goals. So most of those metrics have Burnley as by far the worst team in the league.
Yeah.
Wolves have 2 points, but your underlying numbers think that Burnley are worse. So either Wolves are getting super unlucky and Burnley are getting super lucky, or some combination of them, and we might see that just even out over the course of the season. I've seen Burnley a few times. I've seen them play against Villa. I think they're really bad. We had a lot of concerns about them early in the summer in terms of the midfield makeup, maybe the ability to score goals, all that stuff. The quality disadvantage they're operating from, I think, will end up being just you can't get past it. I looked through the starting 11. I'm not particularly impressed. And even Maxime Estev, who I've seen recently, has a really cool nickname adorned by the Cartilage Free Captains Spurs blog. They call him Maximum Steve, which I think is absolutely amazing. Even Maximum Steve is having a tough old time of it. So I can't find too many positives here. And Jack's been looking at me for the last minute as if I'm talking nonsense. So I'll ask him first. But maybe, just maybe, I am right. Jack, Burnley?
Yeah, I mean, Burnley are dreadful.
Okay, fine. You were looking at me like I was like...
No, sorry, I was also just trying to deal with I was trying to deal with the actual logistics of the podcast, as opposed to actually...
We've got no time for that.
There are some things that you say that I look at you like you've got two heads. That wasn't one of them. Burnley are awful, yeah.
Yeah, I credit where it's due. They've beaten Sunderland, Leeds, Wolves, sides that will probably be around and about them at the end of the season. They've drawn against Forest, but I completely agree with you. I'd also shout out Hartman, the left back. I actually think he's been really, really impressive. I really like watching him. And Kyle Walker has been a lot better than I thought he would be. I thought that was just a really terrible move at the time. But fair play to him. But yeah, you're completely right. The underlying numbers are terrible. Only Spurs have overperformed their XG by more than Burnley's 4. I think they're 5th in Europe for that as well. Zion Fleming has scored 3 goals from 1.1 XG. One amazing goal in there as well. Jadon Anthony, 4 from 2.2. This is not particularly sustainable. Does Martin Dubravka carry on at this level for an entire season? I'm not totally sure either.
He's not been great.
I think he's been better than most people expect. I think he's been one of the better goalkeepers in the bottom 6 or so. But yeah, only Sunderland are averaging fewer shots on target per game. I just think they're going down. I had them 19th.
Fine. I think I've got them 19th or 20th. It's flipping around with Wolves, and we'll see what happens. So 2 of my spots are already full, and sounds like the same for you. Dubravka, answer to the trivia question, which is...
Is he Slovakian? Yes.
No. Trivia question for Dubravka? No. Okay, so it's who was the first goalkeeper to give away a corner for holding onto the ball for too long?
Really?
Yeah, the 8-second rule. That was Martin Dubravka, game week 1, away to Spurs.
Stat.
He got in really early on that. Got his name in the history books.
Good one for the quiz questions that in the future.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that
Bring
is
that
a
up
good
in
one
your
to
conference on a Friday.
You just have to remember that. I'm telling you now, looking you in the eyes,
That
Martin
sounds like an
Dubravka
Opta quiz
owns that
question for
record.
next year, yeah.
Okay? Don't ever get that wrong. Okay. To 16th place currently is Leeds United. They're big, they're blocky, they're tough to play against, but ultimately they probably might give you a result in the end. Jack, you told me 2 months ago you were sat in that chair and told me that I was too high on Leeds in terms of surviving because there were goal-scoring concerns in the squad. You were right.
I was really wondering where you were going to go with that. Yeah, I was.
You were right.
Were you that hot on them? I don't even remember.
I wasn't
being
hot on them. I thought they'd have enough to stay up.
I thought they'd put up a fight, but I didn't think they'd have enough.
And they're in the conversation. Obviously, they're not like gone and buried or anything like that. I think they're well in this conversation for this final spot that we have open. By no means am I right or wrong at this point, but I did think that they would have a little bit more goal-scoring capacity than they've shown over the first 11 games. And a lot of that, somewhat foolishly on my behalf, was anchored on the fact that Noah Okafor could possibly stay fit for not even just 2 weeks, a single game of football. If you could just do 90 minutes, that might help. Because Okafor, when he's played, has been really lively and I've been really impressed. But he's constantly a question mark heading into games and is always being managed. And Dominic Calvert-Lewin is that, plus terrible in front of goal. He's had a terrible start to life. And Lucas Nemet's got a couple of goals but hasn't been trusted so far either. So I don't really have an issue with Leeds' approach to things. I think
playing better football than I thought they would.
Yeah, they're like I said, they're blocky and they'll give you a game and they're very aggressive and they're maxing in on set pieces, all that stuff. They just possibly lack the teeth, and it will cost them in the end if that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, only Palace and Newcastle have underperformed their XG by more. So it does feel like this is a side that are, just don't really take advantage of the quality of chances that they do create. And you look at that forward line, like Okafor, I think he's a really good player. Really good's an exaggeration. A decent player, but 9 league goals in his last 3 seasons.
No Hwang Hee-chan, is he?
No chance.
I like Hwang Hee-chan. Mech has scored 10 in his last 4. Joe Rodon's their joint top scorer. 10 league goals in his last 4.
4 games?
4 seasons.
4 seasons.
4 seasons. Okafor, if I didn't say that right,
This guy's
Okafor nine
on
league goals.
fire.
I mean, his goal at the weekend was insane, but no. Okafor has scored 9 league goals in his last 3 seasons.
Got you.
Mecha 10 in his last 4.
Yeah, no,
But yeah, as I say, slightly more comfortable in possession than I thought. They're actually 10th for pass accuracy, 13th for possession. So they're playing a lot more football than I necessarily thought they would. And some players seem to have improved from the last time they were up as well. I think Brendan Aronson has looked a little bit brighter. But it's not looking too good in terms of taking those big opportunities, and maybe quite comfortable between the boxes as well, but they're still 19th for passes into the box as well. So I have major concerns about Leeds. I mean, before a ball was kicked, I think I had Burnley, Leeds and Brentford going down. I was very wrong about Brentford, seemingly.
Me too.
And I had Sunderland in 17th, just hovering above, and I'm sticking with Leeds and Burnley going down.
Yeah, okay. Well, Daniel Farke as manager as well is potentially not that helpful.
I actually think he's done all right so far.
He's keeping his head above water.
He's done admirably with the tools given to him, is what I would say.
I'm with
Like,
Jack.
there's, you can have concerns about Farke as a manager, but also if you told me that Leeds would look pretty good defensively and be unable to score, and you'd show me the players that they had at their disposal, I would have probably said, yeah, that sounds about right. Like, I don't know what more he can do. Like, it's not Daniel Farke's fault that Dominic Calvert-Lewin has apparently lost all of his compasses to goal, and it's gone haywire. Like, it's just seemingly gone bizarre.
So I think what I mean by that is, like, you're giving yourself a capacity there to maybe make a managerial switch to really upgrade if you need to. So Leeds have got the bones in place of something that come January, if there's a possibility, if you could go and get a goal scorer, and potentially if you could go and pick up a different manager, there are two things there that you can do to genuinely change the situation for yourself and go and survive. Now, I'm not saying they're definitely down if they don't do that, but they have the capacity to make things quite different. I do not see that with Wolves or with Burnley. So there's probably the difference for me.
Yeah, I was going to agree with you. I think Wolves and Burnley feel like they'll probably be quite cut off, whereas that final spot, I think, could go down to the final games, which is what we've kind of all wanted to see for the last few seasons.
I'm sort of minded towards Leeds at this point. However, there is one more club I'd like to bring into the mix, and it's the current 15th place Fulham. And depending on how many Jack Collins tears I can collect into this very small vial, I'll count them, and then I'll see how I feel in terms of whether or not we predict Fulham to go down.
As you heard at the very top of this podcast, actually you two haven't heard this yet, but it's in the montage. It's me on the radio saying, make no mistake, Fulham are right in this relegation scrap. Like, absolutely no doubt about it. Fulham's top goal scorer is own goals.
Okay.
That's not sustainable, I'm afraid.
What's happening? Because it confuses me.
There's a couple of bits and bobs on the table. One is, and actually it's something we never discussed really around the relegation battle, but I think it's worth pointing out, and I think it pertains to quite a lot of the Premier League, not just in the relegation scrap, but this change of the way that the Premier League, or the adaptation of the physicality of the Premier League this season, the leaning on set pieces, the fact that games have become more stop-start, all of those things have played, I think, into the hands of the Championship sides who have come up in particular. The 3 promoted teams, I think, are all benefiting to different extents, but off that, I think it's really done for a couple of sides. I think the reason that Brighton are struggling so much is because this Premier League doesn't really suit them. The fact that Liverpool are struggling quite as much is because this Premier League doesn't really suit them in terms of what they want to try to do. But I think Fulham are maybe the worst beneficiaries. Fulham are good in games that are, on paper, in inverted commas, good. Like, Fulham are good at good games. When the ball is on the deck and the ball's in play, Fulham are a really good side. Like, because they can go man for man with you, they're physical enough to battle, but they really aren't good. And we saw it at Everton at the weekend. Fulham were just bullied by Everton in the 18-yard box, right? Like, you look at where the goals came from, you look at all the disallowed goals. It's all from crosses swung into the box. It's all from set pieces. Fulham haven't adapted to this new Premier League kind of normality, if you will, at all. And whilst the squad is quite similar to last season, I think the actual landscape is very, very different. And I think that Fulham are lacking. Look, it doesn't help that Rodrigo Muniz has been injured for a lot of it, who is a player that actually does kind of thrive in those situations and likes to open up games like that. But I just feel like Fulham are a little bit toothless. There's this thing hanging over the club that Marco Silva's contract ends in the summer, and there is all of this chat about him not signing a new deal, him signing a new deal.
What are most thoughts within the club on that?
I think pretty much everyone wants Silva to stay.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is that he wants backing. He didn't really get the backing he needed in the summer. And look, you can point, I'm not saying that Fulham didn't spend.
You had a stagnant summer, though.
We did have a stagnant, very slow summer. And whilst they did break the club record fee to sign Kevin, an element of this was, Marcus Silva's first press conference after the transfer window closed was, well, I wouldn't have sold Andres Pereira if I didn't think they were bringing in a midfielder. I was promised I was going to be given a midfielder, and I haven't been given one. Right? So that's the first thing you get given after. And now...
That's a bit like when Antonio Conte got given all those new signings, like Tevez, and he went, I miss Emmanuel Jacquerini.
It is a bit.
But I think Andreas Pereira was underrated, though.
No, but it's not even that. It's like, he was like, I just would have kept him around. He probably wouldn't have started loads of games, but he would have been a useful piece to have. Fulham looked light in the middle of the park. And... I think the thing is that Silva wants guarantees that he's going to be backed in the January window. And so he's like, I'll sign a contract if you back me in January. And the club are like, well, we're not backing you in January unless you sign a contract, because otherwise you'll walk away 6 months. So we're a bit of an impasse, right? But look, Fulham have won the games at home that you would have expected them to win, right? They beat Leeds at home, they beat Brentford at home, and they beat Wolves at home. And pretty much away from home, we've been dreadful, most of the time. Not necessarily in terms of all the performances, but in terms of the results. And whilst there is truth in the fact that, Fulham have lost 5 of the last 6, 4 of those games are relatively unwinnable. We never win at Villa Park. Yeah. We just never do.
It's in the rules.
It's just one of the rules of football, I'm afraid.
Last month. It's in the rules.
We lost to Arsenal at home. We lost at St James's Park to Newcastle with a late kind of dagger in that game. And despite the fact we were winning at Bournemouth, we ended up losing that game as well. I think you kind of look at them, and the Everton one steps out as a kind of, do you expect to go to Everton and lose? I don't think it's like absolutely outrageous to do that, because Everton have been very good at the Hill Dickinson. But I think that the performance in that game was the one that really started to raise flags. And so with all of the uncertainty hanging over it, and the fact that Fulham are about to lose Calvin Bassey, Alex Iwobi, and Samuel Chukwueze, who have had differing impacts on the club, but have all been, I think that Chukwueze is making a case to be the starting right winger. Iwobi's been crucial to everything that's been good about Fulham. And Calvin Bassey has been the starting left centre-back for, the last year and a half. Like, when you get to those kind of points, I find it difficult to kind of look at it and say, yeah, this is a team that's definitely going to stay out. I think we finished just above the relegation battle. But I think it would be outrageous to say that Fulham are not in this.
So to be clear, that when Jack's talking about losing those 3 players, it's to AFCON, not to anything else. But yeah, I'm just going to come in with a little bit of sympathy here, which it's probably better to come from me than it is from you, just because of the fandom element. But one of the things that I've been working on for ESPN is called the Luck Index, and I've been tracking injuries, managerial changes, and confirmed VAR mistakes, and looking at starting 11s and trying to track through the season, like who faces who at the right time and who's getting the rub of the green in terms of, you got to play Team X without player Y. That changes the complexion quite a lot. And it will be, I think, by the time you listen to this, it should be out, the first edition. It covers the first 11 games. And Fulham are the unluckiest team in my table in the Premier League this season. That is not to excuse all of it. However, as Jack will well know, Fulham have had to play 2 full games without any strikers fit whatsoever. They've had to play most of the season without their first choice left back. They took the lead at Stamford Bridge only to have it wrongly ruled out. And that was 1-0 at Chelsea, and they ended up losing that game 2-0. And there was a moment when Joachim Andersen limped off against Arsenal where the entire first choice back 4 was therefore injured. Every defender on that pitch was second choice. No one has really been through it like Fulham, according to my research this season. So some sympathies there, in that it basically it can't really get any worse in terms of misfortune.
It can.
All right, Mick. It shouldn't get any worse than what Fulham have experienced. Yeah. And that, for a lot of people, when they're looking at the table, going, how have they ended up down there? Look, not perfect, and this is not the be all end all of it, but they've had it really rough.
Well, for sure. And sometimes you have a bad 6-7 weeks. They started the season, as we kind of mentioned, with 2 wins, 2 draws, and a defeat against Chelsea in that game where there was so much VAR controversy, the Josh King goal, etc. I actually don't. I know what it's like being down there, and I've seen sides that look destined to be in a relegation battle. I personally can't go on board with it, Jack. I'm hotter on Fulham than you are.
I don't think Fulham they don't have the stink of doom on them.
No.
In a way that 3 weeks ago, West Ham had the stink. In a way that Wolves and Burnley, Wolves in particular, have the stink.
Caveat with, if the Marco Silva thing becomes a bit ugly
Yeah.
for whatever reason. You know, Forest have changed manager, West Ham have changed manager. Fulham, if that runs and becomes a distraction, maybe that'll be a factor. But on player-to-player basis, I just think they're significantly better than the three sides I expect to go down.
Okay. And who have Fulham got next?
Sunderland.
Sunderland. Let's talk about Sunderland.
Mate, we're fourth in the league.
Is
What
that-
are we coming to this relegation
Hang on, are you talking
chat?
about title chasing Sunderland?
Is that my best ever segue? It might be. It's not for me to say. Look, Sunderland are not currently in the relegation mix, but it's probably worth just noting that Hull City once started with
enough
6
of this
wins
Hull chat.
in 10 games. And
You've been
then
listening
won-
to the Totally Football Show too
and then
much.
won twice for the rest of the season. They survived, but you don't arrest that kind of momentum, and they sunk next season. No, it's fine. But do you have anything you'd like to say about Sunderland?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we did an entire podcast on it a couple of weeks ago, me and Jack.
No,
when
that
you
was
were-
good stuff, though.
That was good stuff,
Yeah.
for sure. But actually, I think it was quite balanced.
So
to be
tear it
honest.
all down.
I think we'll probably finish 14th to 16th, probably. But I think the start we've had gives us such an advantage in terms of avoiding a relegation battle. But I'm totally with you. Like, if you want to go into underlying numbers, which is only fair that I do because I did it for every other side, Sunderland's are really bad. You know, 2.7 shots on target per game. That's bottom of the league. And we had Wilson Isidore, you know, scoring with pretty much every shot he had. We are being carried through by some amazing defensive performances. Granit Xhaka is playing through his absolute skin. I do expect some of our more attacking signings, the likes of Talby, Brobby's been really useful when he's been used, etc. The likes of Ait-Nouri to kind of grow throughout the season, which gives me a lot of confidence. But we've got a hellish run coming up, although it did start at the weekend against Arsenal. We got a 2-2 draw. And the AFCON question is something worth covering because we've got 7 players. I think it's 7 of our most 15 used are heading off to AFCON, which is not ideal.
So that's Reynaldo and Masuaku, so both left backs.
Yep.
Good stuff. Habib Diarra and Noah Siddiqui,
Yeah.
2 centre mids.
Legs.
Although you've done very well without Diarra so far, who started brilliantly, right? And then you have Talby, Adingra, and Bertrand Traore, so 3 of your wingers. So you've done very well there. It's very clever stuff because you've targeted 3 very specific position groups and just wiped them out. It's pretty tough to do.
Yeah, we do have Dennis Serkin, who's coming back from injury to play left
Big
back.
Dennis.
We are going to give probably Dan Neil and Chris Rigg more minutes in midfield. That's not ideal in the Premier League. I think it's
So it'd
probably a
be
little bit
Xhaka,
lightweight.
Rigg, and who in midfield when both Siddiqui and Diarra
Probably
go?
Rigg playing in front.
Just okay.
Dan Neil.
Oh,
Dan-
Dan
and
Neil,
Dan
sorry,
Neil,
and
okay.
Dan Neil.
Right.
And then we'll play Enzo Lefebvre on the left. We've still got all our strikers, and then hopefully Mundel's back. He could probably play on the right or on the left-hand side, or we put Enzo Lefebvre out there on the right. Maybe we shore up midfield and put Enzo Lefebvre further back as well.
And you did
Recall
recruit-
Patrick Roberts from
Patrick Roberts
from
comes back.
Birmingham.
Yeah.
You did recruit quite a big squad, and this will have been in the thinking, of
Yeah.
course, because a lot of these players that I've named, every single one of those players is a new signing. So all 7. So if you sign 7 players that are going to leave in January for AFCON, or it's December, isn't it? It's late December. Then you are going to have a plan for that. So
Sure.
you will have, the club will have had this.
I'm
in mind.
aware that they've heard of the concept of AFCON.
They have.
Yeah,
Good
so I think they probably have. And we talked about it with Jack. I think we can kind of muddle through that month. We've got terrible fixtures as it is.
Yeah.
So it probably just means that we'll, maybe pick up 2, 3, 4 fewer points than we maybe expect to. But we've honestly got terrible fixtures from now until about mid-January. So
Yep.
we'll drop off for sure. But what a ride it's been, man.
Fantastic. Well, look, can't get through a relegation podcast without mentioning all 3 promoted teams, even if it's just for,
No, you're completely right to mention this.
And while we're on the subject of underlying numbers, let's just reference the expected goals difference table one more time. And to complete the round table, because Burnley are 20th in the XGD table, Wolves are 19th, and who's sat in 18th?
Aston Villa.
Aston Villa.
This has shocked me every time I've looked into any data from the Premier League this season. But you are getting better for sure. But the underlying numbers of Villa this season are weird.
Yeah, they're really bad. So the first thing I would say is take out the first 5-6 games because we didn't play very well. And if you leave those numbers in, it will make us look bad. So it's important to take out all of the games that make us look bad. So only include the good ones. And then if you do that, we're about 12th.
Okay.
Which is still bad. So XG hates Villa. Hates Villa. 5 goals in a row from outside the box. It's like XG's worst nightmare. So, of course, in each game that we've played recently, the numbers don't like us and think that we should have lost. So that is weighing into the XGD table and suggesting that on balance, Villa should not have won those games. the goals that Villa scored against Spurs, for example, the Buendia goal, like just magnificent stuff, but like quite unrepeatable. So Villa will need to be cognizant of the fact that while they've ticked along okay, and we are an okay team, not great, not bad. I sound like that Ron Weasley mix. Not you, not Hermione. Not you.
You've been on one today, Sam. Between this and Uncle John,
This podcast has gone off the rails.
What was I talking about?
but
Villa and Sunderland are both going to be absolutely fine.
Yeah,
Let's be clear.
We're okay, but XG hates us right now because we keep scoring worldies, basically. But it does point to a bit of a creativity issue, and it's something that I have mentioned a fair bit, which is that Morgan Rogers has had quite a tough start to the season. Ollie Watkins has been really quite terrible. Harvey Elliott has not worked out whatsoever, and odds are right now, unless something changes, he might go back to Liverpool in January. He might not be around for much longer, despite
They could do with him.
despite me thinking it was an absolutely sensational signing. And Sancho's played 262 Premier League and Europa League minutes only.
I was arguing with someone on TikTok the other day that said he was your best player this season.
You said that?
No, I didn't say that. I put him in one of my worst. I put him in the worst signing 11.
See, this is the problem with modern football discourse, Jack. Whoever said that he's been the best player is an idiot. And you putting him in the worst 11 also makes you an idiot.
I mean, it was about a month ago before his improvement, but he's not been great.
You know, he's not really been able to play very much.
Well, exactly.
He's been fine when he's played.
He joined late, missed the first 3 games, had no pre-season, needed a month to get up to scratch, and then was ill for 2 weeks, which I'm going to go ahead and guess was basically like COVID.
When I dropped my killer TikTok on him.
So it's he just couldn't handle it. He was out for 2 weeks because Dougie was mean,
Heartbroken.
So he hasn't played very much, but his opportunity to play has been shrunk quite considerably. So Villa could absolutely use whatever they're paying him in wages better, but. It's not been the disaster that the face value look would suggest. In the meantime, Buendia's picked up so much that he's in the Argentinian national squad.
Unbelievable.
Don't call it a comeback.
Emi Buendia has been called up for Argentina. He's been that good, and that is keeping Villa afloat right now. But there is a creativity problem. It needs to be fixed. Goal scoring chances need to be cleaner and better. It can't carry on.
But let's be real. You're finishing 10th.
Higher than that, mate. But. It's not a relegation concern. But if we're roping Sunderland into the discussion on the basis that they're a promoted team, we're going to have to discuss Villa even for 4 minutes there, just because they are in the bottom 3 of the expected goals difference table.
Well, I think I pretty much revealed my entire table, Sam, but you left one mystery team free. So it's actually come down to the moment where you have to put your money where your mouth is. We're predicting, and you need to. Yeah, I'm going Wolves, Burnley, Leeds, and West Ham 17th.
Yeah, I am going to go ahead and put Leeds in 18th, which is a direct betrayal of myself and my own pre-season predictions. So sorry to me.
You've got to update.
And I don't like changing my mind, but I have to do so if I'm presented evidence.
I predicted Liverpool to win the league. Like, you've got to change your opinion when there's new evidence. You know?
Yeah, sure, that's fine. Leeds maybe are just going to fall shy here. It's Leeds or West Ham, and I struggle to see Bowen and Paqueta not having enough in the tank. I really do subscribe to that core theory that if you have enough goals, then the rest will figure itself out. And I think Nuno's a really good coach for the scenario. It will just get better. So I'm going to go with Leeds, and I've got Wolves and Burnley, obviously, as 2019.
Jack, final shout. Are Fulham going down? Are you in the mix?
We're in the mix, but not.
Make no mistake.
Make no mistake. We are right in the heart of a relegation battle, but I think I think unless it spirals out of control with the Silva situation, and look, losing becomes a habit, right? Like we know these things, but I think that Fulham should just about have too much to so I'm going to say we probably finished 17th, 16th.
Would you make any changes to Leeds, Burnley, Wolves?
Not at the moment, no. Yeah. Like I think that there is an argument that you can make that if Leeds do go and sign someone who can put the ball in the back of the net in the January window, then maybe you have to revisit this a little bit.
Yep.
But as it stands right now, I think that you struggle to look at it. I still think the West Ham are going to be right amongst it. And look, whatever they do in January is going to be interesting as well, because are the board going to pile in a load of money if they're being protested at every nook, turn and cranny? I don't know. But I think the only thing I wonder with West Ham is that if one big injury could really, really put them, in trouble. If Jarrod Bowen went down with an injury, how on earth the West Ham survive? That would be my only question. But you could maybe make that argument for a load of things.
You could, and also just wonder like what the knock-on effect of other people's actions might be here. Where like if Leeds got into the window and were like, we're going to put £25 million on the table for a striker, and we're going to go and buy 10 goals, or what we hope would be 10 goals. How would West Ham react to that, or vice versa? Like if West Ham went out and then signed a striker, would Leeds be spurred into action, and would that change things? Because that has the capacity to change a lot of things. If only one of those two teams picks up a really important player, it will skew the battle. And how will the other one react? And with the added board pressure, Jack, as you mentioned, with West Ham needing to show that they are putting their money forward and trying to appease the fan sentiment, it could be really interesting.
I've got good news for West Ham fans, because when Jack said about Jarrod Bowen getting injured, something in my mind was like, I don't think I've ever remembered him being injured.
Yeah, it doesn't happen.
Well, I looked it up. He missed a month last year. He missed 2 games the season before. That's it.
Injury prone.
He's like Bruno Fernandes. He's the Bruno Fernandes of East London.
He's the Ollie Watkins.
Plays every game.
Ollie Watkins never gets injured.
That's true.
Touchwood. It's been rubbish. Right, anyway, that's it. We've got through the whole pod. We've got through 8 teams.
Yeah. Don't complain. We covered it all.
And we didn't even cover Crisis Club Newcastle, who can't win away from home, and attack has dried up. Crisis Club Everton. I don't really have a reason for that. Crisis Club Brentford, who we both put in our bottom 3.
I had them 20.
I would like to say that I was very, very headstrong about the fact that Brentford will be nowhere near it. And I'm feeling quite vindicated. Annoyed, but vindicated.
I win, but at what cost?
Yeah, but at what cost, yeah.
A Wario reference. Superb. Right, let's call it there.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of The Truth on my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it and you prefer to listen to your podcast out and about, go check out the Ranks FC podcast feed. And if you've enjoyed this, don't forget to leave it a like. It really does help with the algorithm. Leave a comment too and subscribe to the channel. And I'll catch you next week. Bye-bye.